with the webinar. Thank you. First of all, thank you everybody for joining. It's I hope you're safe. We are living in troubled times, so looking forward to a very riveting conversation. So just give us a couple of minutes. It will be great if you want to go to the chat box and tell a bit about yourself. What sectors you come from. That'll be great. For example, you could say that you're from social sector, you're from business sector, corporate. You just have a very brief introduction. So good. Thanks, Gaurav. It's good to. So thanks a lot. First, thank you for being part of the webinar. As you know, we are going to be discussing the impact of the pandemic in India, especially in the development sector. So before, let me introduce you to Ruchi Mathur. So, Ruchi Mathur is currently the CEO of Pune City Connect. It's a unique platform that enables large impact through collaboration. It's based on a public-private partnership with local government, corporates, non-profit, and citizens. Now, Pune City Connect works in areas of quality education, sustainable livelihood, and digital empowerment. And also I'll talk about a little bit of my what I do, and you can read more about Pune City Connect. We also have the first podcast done by me and my platform was with Ruchi Mathur. Ruchi Mathur also has 25 years of very rich experience spanning both in the corporate and the non-profit sector. She is an alum of Ahmedabad. She worked in various functions such as marketing, fundraising, HR, strategy, and CSR head across myriad industries, including advertising, retail, IT, and non-profit sector. Her last stint was at Zensa Technologies, where Ruchi was L&D head and also head of corporate social responsibility. So before we start the conversation, a bit about myself. My name is Nishant Malhotra. I worked extensively in India and abroad. I worked in financial sector across diverse profiles. I've done my master's in public administration from University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Before that, I did my MBA from SIBM in China Europe National Business School. I have a social startup, Middle Road OPC Private Limited, which is called a platform, themiddleroad.org, which is dedicated to enabling social change and impact in the sustainable development sector. Now, it's got a online platform and e-publication. It's got a tech sector, and I'm building also a consultancy and advisory. A good publication, Pune City Connect, which got also an embedded podcast. So I suggest later on, whenever you get a site, you should just check it out. With much further ado, I welcome Ruchi. Thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure to have you on the platform.
Hi, Nishant.
So, Ruchi, you had very diverse experience. Now, I'll start with how's been the role of Pune City Connect in India? You have worked on a lot of projects. You could just tell how you've, with the experience in the project, and how's been your response to the pandemic?
Okay. Thanks, Nishant, and thank you so much for inviting me to this chat. It's really a pleasure, and thanks to everyone for attending this. I'll just first probably give a brief context about Pune City Connect so that the following remarks would kind of sit in a framework for everyone. Pune City Connect is a non-profit organization. Our mandate is to work in Pune. So in that sense, we're a place-based organization. And the idea is to enable change in Pune at both scale as well as depth. So the whole idea of taking on this mandate, which we did in July 2015, was to enable a system through which large-scale change can happen. Many times we look around us and we see a lot of entities that are doing very good work. But the thing is that most of the time, though the work is, of course, excellent, it is needed, it also happens to be in silos. It's in pockets. And we don't actually find examples where there is collaboration happening at scale, and therefore there is a chance to do transformation. So the objective of Pune City Connect is to be like a spine, and we work with 4 stakeholders, that is government, Pune Municipal Corporation, there is corporates, there is non-profits, and there is citizens. So these are the 4 stakeholders we work with, and the whole idea is to bring them together for common purpose. As Nishant mentioned, we are working on 3 tracks, that is sustainable livelihood, digital empowerment, and education. So just to give an example of the collaboration part of it. So for instance, the livelihood track is run through these centers called the lighthouses. These are large physical spaces, and the entire space, the location, all the capital expenditure for setting up the lighthouse is provided by Pune Municipal Corporation, and the entire financial support for running the lighthouses is provided by corporates through corporate social responsibility. And plus there are volunteers who are mentors to the young people who come 18 to 30 years of age from slum communities for skilling and livelihood programs. And the programs themselves we are running in collaboration with other non-profits. So this is how it's sort of a real public private partnership in terms of capex and opex being joined at the hip, as well as working in collaboration with non-profits and citizens. So till date we have around 48,000 citizens trained through digital empowerment, around 9,000 young people from 350 odd slum communities enrolled into the lighthouses, and we are working with pretty much all the Marathi medium PMC schools, 180 schools approximately, through a large scale capacity building program for teachers. So that's in a nutshell. So Nishant, coming to the question you asked about the response to the pandemic, firstly, I would want to face the remarks with the acknowledgement that there are many non-profits. Pune City Connect is just one of them that are really trying to do their best as far as the response to the pandemic is concerned. And probably the little bit of journey that I'll be showing you is kind of representative of the journey that many non-profits have gone through. So at this stage, I'll just show around 4 slides to sort of talk about the journey that Pune City Connect went through. And to start with, it was just like for the rest of us, it was something we were absolutely not prepared for. Though one had been following the story in China, but what exactly will be happening in India, I think, and none of us, I think, foresaw that there would be, like 4 to 5 lockdowns happening one after the other. And so when this happened, then it took us a little time. I would say that hardly much luxury of time was there, maybe 1 or 2 days, to actually adjust to the whole concept of working from home, and at the same time to start reaching out to communities. So the very first exercise that we did, because we felt that it is important to have some kind of rational base on which to build the efforts, was a huge listening exercise. We started this with a small target that we'll reach out to around 200 young people, and everyone, right from the chairman to every last employee in the organization, spoke with at least 2 young people from a slum community in order to understand what exactly is happening. Is there a shortage of food? Is there not yet a shortage of food, but there will be? Is food available in ration shops? Is there a health issue? What exactly is happening? Because there were so many conflicting pieces of information that were coming in. And that exercise, which started with 200 young people, today we have reached out to more than 6,000 people in communities in order to understand what exactly is the situation. So I'll just sort of take you through the result of that listening exercise. I'll share my screen at this point. So as a result of the listening exercise, the 3 sort of big things which came up. One is related to ration. I mean, no prizes for guessing that. It's a huge requirement. I mean, till date, I mean, in fact, the more days that pass, the more panic there is around this. Secondly, the whole aspect of emotional well-being. Because one of the things we found was that apart from the impact on income, the impact on food, and all the physical impacts that are happening, there is a lot of emotional distress, because firstly, people did not even understand what exactly has hit them. To begin with, in the first few days, they had no idea why this lockdown has happened and what exactly is COVID. It was just like a word, and they didn't know about other welfare programs that were running. Maybe some of them may have been close to them, so there was no system really in place, and there was also a huge amount of lack of understanding about fake news versus real news, all of that aspect. And thirdly, more than 60% of the people that we spoke with reported that they had a very major loss of income. Maybe we'll talk more about that later, but in general, other research reports and surveys also state that more than 50 to 60% of people have had at least a 50% impact on income, whether they were wage earners before the pandemic, whether they were salaried people, whether they are farmers, etc. So,
Just to interrupt here, Ruchi, I mean, you gave a very good figure, just 50%. We have a quantitative figure now, very specific. So that's fantastic. That gives you a
yeah,
very good idea about the social impact it had.
absolutely. In fact, there's a survey done by Azim Premji Philanthropic Initiatives, which has reached out to around 4,000 people so far and still continuing. And these numbers are also from that survey. It pretty much matches with what we came across as well. Coming to the next slide. So essentially, we got into relief because it was obvious that food is needed. And in fact, if we had not done this listening exercise personally, we may not have been able to take that very, very clear and strong decision that we have to get into relief work, because it's not something we had done before. And just to quickly go over what was done. So ration was a very, very huge requirement. So we got into distribution of ration kits. Till date, around 6,500 kits have been delivered. Each kit has got, 5 kilos of rice, 1 liter of oil, 5 kilos of wheat, etc., etc., and lasts a family of 4 for around 2 to 3 weeks. With these 6,500 kits that have been delivered, around 8 lakh to 10 lakh meals have actually got delivered. And it actually sounds sort of simple when one looks back now. But to begin with, we had no money. It was really an act of courage to even start doing that. And there was no knowledge also what should go into a kit, how exactly do we go about distribution. Transportation was a huge issue because of the lockdown. So there have been a lot of issues, but we were very fortunate that we've had the partnership of Pune Municipal Corporation for all of the concerns that came up. And that's how we were able to actually resolve and move forward. The second relief effort was related to setting up of a helpline. Again, this was in partnership with Pune Municipal Corporation, which was a Basti Mitra Corona support helpline just for low-income communities. The best part of this helpline is that it is run by alumni from the Lighthouse program, the skilling program that I mentioned earlier. And in this way, the people who call on the helpline, they were able to relate to the people who were, the respondents on the helpline. And also it provided livelihood to the people who were manning the helpline. So a lot of good things related to that. Overall, 6,000 plus calls have been received. 98% have been for ration. We have a backend system that does a verification of the people who called for ration, and then deliveries happen accordingly. So that's really in terms of the two relief initiatives. With a sight on the long term or the medium term, we also started rethinking about our core programs and how can the core programs run in the wake of a lockdown. Because when a pandemic, all our programs are normally delivered through physical centers, but now our 19 digital empowerment centers were closed down. The 7 lighthouses were closed down. Schools are shut. So what do you do? So we had to sort of reinvent and become relevant to the need of the time, and we basically went online. We just took around 1 week from the lockdown to reconfigure the core programs and to actually go online with both the livelihood curriculum as well as the digital empowerment curriculum. And just a few pictures is this is the digital empowerment program, which is around internet literacy, something which has become absolutely critical in this time. It is like a core element of recovery from COVID, because since you cannot do things face to face, how are the people in low income communities going to pay their bills? How can they transfer money to their parents living in the village, etc., etc. So on the right hand side, you can see the curriculum. It's a 40-hour curriculum. Part of it is related to COVID awareness, including Arogya Setu app, etc. Part of it is actual internet literacy. And here on the left-hand side, this picture is very interesting. It's the picture of a lady from Janta Vasahat, the largest slum community in Pune. And you can see how she is really enjoying herself, learning about digital empowerment through her mobile phone. I mean, that photograph, that is basically a screenshot of the mobile phone. There are other learners also. And it was amazing to us, the kind of adaptability and the fact that people, as against earlier when they used to sit in a classroom or, sort of classroom setup of this kind and learn, they are enjoying having the learning instrument in their own hands. It has impacted, the whole extent of self-learning. There's a lot of peer learning that's going on, because people are just uploading their own photo screenshots to help the other person. And these are all actually unexpected bonuses. And what's more, people are also joining with their whole family. Like you can see the picture of this is Vaishali Mane from the Gultekri Digital Center, and you can see that her whole family, and this is not just a one-off situation. In many cases, these are some very interesting things that are happening. So I'm just
So
going
there
to,
are,
yeah,
Ruchi,
stop.
just to interrupt you, just because there are a lot of you showed a lot of data, and just to quickly also, I forgot to tell the audience, you can ask questions, you can put your questions in the question section. Some few thoughts came in. You showed a lot of data from the slum community. What has been there? I mean, is there a lot of panic due to the pandemic? How they're reacting to the technology? Are you they're downloading the app and they're ready to listen to? Are they able to sort of understand what are the risks facing the because of the COVID? Are they able to understand what is happening? What's been your experience?
Yeah, no, so Nishant, there's a huge impact on low income communities, of course, as a result of the pandemic. I would say that you could talk about it in terms of lack of food, loss of livelihood, loss of lack of money, impact on health, and something which really breaks my heart, and I think breaks the heart of many people. Even more than all of this, which is loss of dignity. These are, I would say,
Yeah.
the various kinds of impact which have happened on communities. Food, apparently, again from the APPI survey, around two-thirds of urban households have less than a week's worth of money for buying essentials, and actually doesn't even need a survey to tell us that, because we are in the communities and we can see that this is the case. So there's huge amount of panic with respect to food, because there doesn't seem to be any end to the tunnel. Because people have lost their livelihood. Like, say, if you're a wage earner, if you're an electrician, so you can't go to anyone's home anymore to actually solve the electrical problems. And straight away, basically the livelihood is has disappeared. Many people are living in rented places, and so the lack of money is not just about not being able to buy food, but unable to pay rent, having to take loans. Majority of people have not yet received cash transfers, and of course, the at this point of time, COVID infections are very much on the rise, and I think we all know, whether it's a Dharavi in Mumbai, whether it is the slum communities in Pune, whether it is low income communities elsewhere. These are all very packed places. The heat is, this is summer. Many people live in shanties with tin roofs. They are falling sick because of the heat. They don't have money to buy medicines. People who are otherwise on medication are not able to, have money to continue medicines, like say for diabetes. We know people whose, people in the family are suffering from other very serious diseases like cancer, not able to buy the medicines for that. And of course also COVID infections, which are very much, we've come across them. We are helping people with the kind of hospitalization that's required, enabling them to get the tests done, etc. And the loss of dignity is there because the whole thing that people are unfortunately being placed in a position where they have to ask for food, like even calling on the helpline, uh, and having to ask that I need food, and then there is a follow up call to understand, and of course the follow up call is for the purposes of really understanding the other things also that a person needs. So we note down about livelihood and the rest of the situation, but I think that is really the right of a person who's like a skilled earner and who used to earn money to now have to stand in a line. We had a case one day which really brought tears to my eyes, that we had asked someone to come to the lighthouse to get their food, but on the way the police caught that person and beat that person up. And of course, these things will happen because of the coordination that needs to happen between, whether it is the police, whether it is the administration, whether it is communities, and everyone is under pressure really to be able to do their best to contain the pandemic. And in fact, at the top levels, people have got very, very good intention as far as the administration is concerned. Most of the time, it's going down also. But these are the kinds of cases that really
Kind
are.
of. I think we also got a very good question from Vidula. She's an intern at the Middle Road, my organization. She was asking about the emotional distress due to the pandemic. I think you discussed that. That's really coming out now. You feel that is it really high? Are we able to handle, like how do you see that compared to what previously? If you are going to compare the two
It is
situations.
very high, yes. And there are people who've been calling us saying that they are suicidal. We've
Oh,
also
okay.
I mean, we know a couple of cases where unfortunately the suicide has happened as well. And when suicides happen, that's only the tip of the of what is the
Iceberg.
issue. There are many other people who are feeling extremely distressed. It so happens that some of the very few people take it to the last resort. So yeah, there is a huge amount of emotional distress, and even if a person is falling sick, getting normal fever, they're feeling panicked that I've got COVID, and people around them also are feeling panicked. So it's not an easy situation.
So, Ruchi, you talked, and maybe you could also, if you want to go, and you missed out not from your slide, but my one question came, and you talked about Pune Municipal Corporation, and you work in a public-private partnership, which is one of the most important enablers for United Nations, the 17th Sustainable Development Goal. So, would you like to highlight more of your work now during the time of the pandemic? How Pune Municipal Corporation is enabling you in your present agenda?
Yeah. I mean, Pune Municipal Corporation at any time is a huge support. I think essentially the whole idea of Pune City Connect was co-created between Pune Municipal Corporation. At that time in 2014-15, there was a municipal commissioner in Pune, Mr. Kunal Kumar, and he and his team were very much part of the this idea itself that can we create a platform which would enable public-private partnership for social development. And so the kind of ownership that Pune Municipal Corporation has on the programs, and rightly so, is tremendous. So I think Pune City Connect. I mean, this kind of partnership where there is this level of expenditure of capital expenditure, or this kind of investment in community awareness, like Pune Municipal Corporation, the social workers, the corporators, they all spread awareness to their constituencies about you can go and enroll into this digital program, you can go and enroll into this lighthouse program. So all of this is fairly unique. In fact, I think this is the only such model in the country. And in fact, last year, amazingly enough, there's an institute, Aspen Institute. They went to 5 different countries for examples of public-private partnership in the livelihood space, and also other kinds of collaboration. And they in fact have gone on record to state that the model that they've seen being followed at Pune because of Pune Municipal Corporation's initiative and also Pune City Connect is something they've not seen in any of those other countries. So we just love working with PMC because they, it takes sometimes it does take time to get, say, an agreement signed or get the approval through. But once it is through, then whatever happens just happens at scale. And there are many people within the corporation who are extremely committed, whether it is related to this pandemic, where, we were allotted a specific nodal officer from the slum rehabilitation community department just to be able to coordinate the efforts that are being made. Or whether it is in normal times, where there is again, a nodal officer, coordinating officers who are good enough to take out time to help to coordinate for all of this. Overall, for every 1 rupee that corporates are spending on the programs of Pune City Connect, there is 1.5 to 2 rupees that is being spent by Pune Municipal Corporation across, the last 5 years.
That's a very good perspective. So one big question comes in, somebody who's sitting around the world to see how's pandemic affecting India. For example, I was listening to a lot of webinars in the US, and they are saying that incremental amount of money is coming off from philanthropy and giving into the social sector, which was not coming before. So have you seen a marked shift? How is all the actors within the development sector, if getting affected by the pandemic, specifically the sustainable development sector?
Yeah, I mean, there is of course a huge impact on the development sector. Number one, many of us are having to reinvent ourselves on the go. There was a webinar that I was part of it. There were some 400 people attending from different non-profit organizations, and there was a vote done, and 60% of them said that they were already doing COVID relief, and this was around a month back. So it was not that long after the lockdown started. And if you think about it, that's quite phenomenal, because non-profits, by all narratives, are not as structured and or as organized as say the corporate sector is. So to actually be able to run full tilt into something which is happening at this kind of scale, and I think there's been huge amount of relief that has been provided by NGOs, whether it is a mobile crash, Rotary efforts, Gunj in Pune, C/DA, or a Digital Empowerment Foundation, Hope for the Children, KKPKP. There are many non-profits. I mean, everyone is really doing their bit, but non-profits in a way are facing their hour of action, but they're also facing their biggest challenge, which is
Yeah.
sustainability. Because most people, philanthropists, and most of the webinars I attend, people seem to agree on the fact that it's very unlikely that there would be any new fund flows in the next 12 to 24 months outside of COVID. So many of us who are running, maybe running programs that are not, falling into the COVID ambit, but are extremely important with respect to structure, systems, and ongoing development work. It's like you're facing a possibility of insolvency. The current, and again, even in the philanthropy, funds that are coming in at this point, current energy is towards relief, not yet that much towards recovery and resilience, but I'm sure that would change. And in fact, I was seeing some of the slides by Dasra. It's a capacity building and a resource organization for non-profits in India. And they did a survey amongst around 350 sort of non-profits who are doing substantive work, and around 65% reported that in the next 6 months they're looking at the possibility of insolvency, or otherwise significant amount of mission drift. So it is a time when one is that the current donors become very important. I think the good part is that many of the donors, that this is what even Pune City Connects experiences, and I believe there are many others like that, who have said that at least as far as the current program year is concerned, don't worry, we understand, and let's complete that. I think the other good thing is that one way of looking at it is the opportunity is that there is a lot of philanthropy and funding coming in for COVID work, and if one is able to direct it such that a reconstruction can happen, and that really is the opportunity that I see, then that becomes huge, and that becomes something which is quite welcome. But all the same, there is no taking away from the fact that the development sector we have to reimagine our mission, our goals, and we have to really be able to change our programs on the go.
So you spoke great. I mean, let's take philanthropy. Azim Premji, I think, is one of the highest. He's donated about $350 million to an extent, as one of the top three donators in terms of COVID-19. Very specifically contact. Even Ratan Tata is, and the Tata Trust has given enormous. So yeah, there's a lot of giving has come from India into. And you think, how is that giving shaping up? You think about the opportunities which are going to be rising. How best we can, things could be coming up. You think what
I see a
would be the
few
next path in there?
2 or 3 opportunities. I think one of the things that has happened as a result of the pandemic is that the nature of the amount, the what shall I say, the injustice that exists has become very stark and has become very clear in a way, because it is impossible to shut one's eyes to the plight of migrants. It is not possible to not know about so many people who are going hungry just around ourselves, because it might be through the people, our own house help. It's not that everyone needs to be in the non-profit sector. I've read so many stories of citizens who are, otherwise not engaged with NGOs at all, who've really done a yeoman's job in terms of going out there, either delivering cooked food or delivering ration kits, etc. So I think that's become very clear, and the digital divide has become very clear. The importance of the internet, as people are saying that internet is a basic right, like food, shelter, and clothing, and that might change actually policy decisions. So I think this starkness has shown up. That's one of the opportunities. And I think secondly, technology, whilst if it is not being going to be used as a leveler, it would end up being something that exacerbates the divide. But on the other hand, we really can use it at this time to create a more level playing field, in the country, or even in the world at large. So looking at digital empowerment for everybody, 100% digital empowerment, looking at tech-led initiatives, whether in the case of education or health or skilling, these will create a level playing field which was not there before and which was not possible before at this kind of scale. And I think the third opportunity is related to collaboration. And of course, Pune City Connect is all about collaboration. So something very close to our hearts. But it is, there is a lot of empathy out there, and there's also a lot of outrage. Some of the articles and some of the people that I've read about, they're talking about how, for them personally, things will not go back to being the same, because willy-nilly, by doing volunteering work, they've come to know a lot more about the conditions that people live in. And they don't think that this work is something that can stop, because a lot of it is needed. And this is actually the same as a non-profit. A non-profit always has a sense of urgency, because it's the huge need out there. So you know that you have to keep going. So if this has got sparked off in individuals, then we're looking at something which could really be a movement, for a movement which is created out of a sense of oneness and out of a sense of outrage, and where one is using one's ability to actually be able to have a more equitable, more just society and a way of living. So that really is, I think, these are the opportunities that I see.
So there are two very good questions, and it builds on to what you're saying, right? How can there's one question is, how can the civic societies like students, and how can people contribute? I mean, one way is of course donations, but the other, like students who in civic societies, is there a way we can create a platform? We can do something, like for example, in my website, I keep there's a COVID response section which I built in. There are a lot of links to donations or other ways we are doing it. But can we get the whole platform or other ways to get the whole community within India or abroad, be totally connected? Can we do something here?
Yeah, I think this is one of the best times, for volunteering, because a lot of things are happening online. And, on the one hand, of course, there is the physical and face-to-face volunteering. There's a huge need of people who can go on the ground and actually help with distribution. But on the other hand, everyone doesn't have the opportunity or the freedom or the wherewithal to be able to do that at this point. But even being able to help with in an online way. So, for example, the organization that does our audits, SK Jain and Associates, they called up proactively around 3 weeks back, and they said that many of us have got some time on our hands, and we would like to use it for some kind of contribution. And actually, they became our entire second layer, the verification that was happening of callers on the helpline, and also the livelihood related conversation that we wanted to have with them. This entire thing got led by, a team of, I think, 25 to 30 people from the organization. So every day they would give around 2 to 3 hours, and they were, managing the helpline. But that's one example. Another example is that of being able to contribute to, say, something like digital empowerment. So, it is not that difficult to be able to actually, we are finding, to be able to go through, whether it's a curriculum, whether it's application based, but to walk a person through, okay, this is how you can do a cashless transaction. And in fact, being able to induct a person into internet literacy through the use of the internet, that's very powerful. Person just willy-nilly has to become comfortable with the medium, and other such options. So there are many options. Yes.
So, I'm also opening the floor to the audience. I keep getting the questions. You keep posting it, and I'll keep asking Ruchi those questions. So we have now another question is, what elements of empathy and outrage would you make best use to create an impactful moment? So that's a very good question. How are you going to use those negativities in many ways and make it positive, and uh, have a sort of a community building impact moment there?
I actually think outrage is a positive emotion.
Sure. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Outrage comes from a sense
Yeah.
of injustice. So it comes in a very good space. Outrage is different from losing one's temper or from just pure like say anger. But outrage is about against something that this shouldn't happen. So nothing like outrage to actually get channeled into a movement.
That's right. So when we, you discussed, you worked, you graduated from IIM Ahmedabad, then you worked across a lot of nonprofits. You worked with CRY, you worked for Teach for India before you went and you're heading CSR activities at Zensar. So during your journey, what was some of the most important attributes which you see are important for youth to have a sustainable career in social development sector? Which you think helped you in your life? One, like it could be perseverance, it could be empathy is of course one. You cannot work within this sector if you don't have empathy. Some of the things which you can highlight which help.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest would be sense of purpose. That's really what dictates a lot of what one does. So being in touch with that sense of purpose, which for me has fortunately been quite strong forever, that has helped a lot because every journey has its challenges, and so does this one. Did this one, and it continues to do so. So I think that's very critical. Apart from that, I think resilience is required, especially if like when you work in the non-profit sector and you're especially a model like Pune City Connect, which is all about collaboration or collective action. So you are in a position of dependence. So, for example, Pune Municipal Corporation will say that we are ready to start 50 digital centers. We can give you the locations. Please start them. But on the other hand, we have to have a partnership with those many corporates. Corporates who will say that yes, we can support the operating expenses of 50 digital centers. And so it has happened that the digital centers are ready, but there is no partner, and that we have to cut a sorry face figure in front of PMC. And sometimes it's the other way around, that there is a donor, the MOU is signed, everything is there, but due to elections, due to floods, due to various things, things have got delayed at at the government's end, and so therefore the program can't start. So this kind of anything that one is trying to do, which is by its nature one of collective action, you have to have a lot of resilience, and you have to coordinate a lot. You have to really persevere, and you have to pray and really pray for luck. So yeah, I think perseverance, as you said, is very key. Yeah.
So you articulated the question. So I think one of my last questions would be, and we're also looking forward to more questions from the audience. It's like, when we go into the future, when we come out into a new normal, I mean, that's when we're going to come back from the COVID situation, and I'm sure it's going to sometime in the future we're going to come over it. What do you think will be your biggest challenges now? Do you think there will be some different kind of challenges as compared to what they were previously?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges are actually showing even now. It is actually my fear is that it shouldn't happen that we go back to where it was. That's a dread really, because that situation wasn't good, and because that situation wasn't good to begin with, that's the reason why when the pandemic happened, this kind of absolute split has happened between, as far as the haves and the have-nots are concerned. So I think the challenge will be to very intentionally define that what do we want as a vision? What do we want as a new normal? And this is easier said than done, because here now we are talking about collective consciousness. How can one actually enable a common sense of what I want my city or my country to move towards? Because that vision, that default vision of the future, is actually what tends to happen, because you've got some sort of unconscious thought in your head that this is how it will go. If most people think that yeah, all of this is fine, but after 8 months or maybe it will be 1 year, but everything will we'll again have large gatherings, we will slum communities will still not have sanitation facilities, people will still be staying 10 people to a small room, etc., then likely it will happen. But if the collective vision itself changes, then the actions towards it starts changing. So I think that this is a big challenge that's facing us, and we need to crack that. How can we collectively define and intentionally define a new norm?
So although I said my last, so I'll just, as a question, I'll just go to one last one. So what would you expect now? What do you want from the world? What would you like? Is any message for everybody out there, and how best we can, help?
But I guess you're asking about some message for what each person can do.
Or anything which any message, and what do you want from? How can we help? How can society help Pune City Connect?
For Pune City Connect, and I think even for the development sector in general, I think right now it is extremely important to be able to support financially, because many of us are relooking at all the budgets, relooking at what we can afford, whether people in the, whether we have enough to be able to survive the year, if the core programs are supported, not supported, what can we expect by way of that, what new things we can do. So I think that is one really important aspect. I think philanthropists are doing a lot, and many of them are being supportive. So given the fact that one does have to reimagine and reinvent, it would be very important to be able to do this collaboratively. And I really think that many of us are already doing whatever we can. I'm overwhelmed actually by the kind of the way society, and each of us, meaning I'm also part of society, how we have responded to this. It's really heartening. I have not seen this happen in any other disaster, and I think it's about really taking that forward and taking accountability for the immediate situation around me and doing what I can to make it happen.
And we have this professor from Symbiosis. He's very keen to know if the students can associate with Pune City Connect for digital literacy. So you already have people out there who are very willing to help. Yeah. So that's good.
Thank you.
So I think we are very close to our closing time. We are open if anybody wants as any particular question, you're welcome to post, and we'll be happy to answer that. Otherwise, if then I think we'll close this session. So if anybody wants or has any specific thing, you can post a question now. So thank you, Ruchi. It was fantastic to have you again. I really appreciate you gave very deep insights. You gave something very impactful. You gave a lot of figures. Now we have a much better idea, not only what's happening in Pune or in India. I mean, globally we are looking at how things are reaching out. So there's just one question: how to connect with Ruchi, and I think I'll be able to share, or Ruchi could. If she's okay, I can share the email ID. So thank you. Thanks a lot, Ruchi. I really appreciate giving time and speaking here.
Thank you so much, Nishant. I just want to say one thing about the volunteering aspect, since that's the one question or one comment that did come in, that the requirement, I think for most NGOs, the requirement is that, the opportunity is there for volunteering, and the requirement is that the volunteering to be self-organized, for it to be self-organized, because otherwise the non-profit or the people in the team, they have to really figure out that, okay, how can I leverage all of this energy, which is of course a good problem to have, but sometimes one may not have the bandwidth to solve it. So volunteering is most welcome, and it works best, and it would be lovely. And this is not specifically because of the comment from you, sir, related to Symbiosis College. Symbiosis, we have worked with students in the past as well, and it would be really good because it is a fairly structured program. But in general, as far as my comment on volunteering goes.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, thank you, Nishant, and thank you, everyone. Pleasure being here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. See you around. Thank you. And stay safe. Just with a message, social distancing always helps, and just be safe and be happy. Thank you.